The songs which I'm going to sing are linked by one thing only. That is that I heard them during my quite long life. I'm now 88 and I've had what I think is a quite enjoyable life, and I hope other people enjoyed sharing some of it with me. Rugby was 40,000 people. It was a small, not terribly exciting place with one famous thing, the school, which gave its name to rugby football. I went to a small school in the town. My parents didn't have any money, so I couldn't go to the other school, which was very expensive. I was an only child. My parents were not very social. I had a perfectly good childhood, and they were very good parents, but it didn't give me very wide views. I didn't have any musical education. My parents scarcely ever listened to music, except popular music, and I never went to a concert till I was about 16, I think, and only really heard music when I went to Oxford later on. This first song I heard when I was 5, and there was a program on the BBC which was for children, especially for children. So I listened to it with my mother. I heard this song sung by a very elegant gentleman who was called Uncle Mac. The song is a nonsense song. It's by Edward Lear, a British writer from the 19th century who travelled in fact to Israel and wrote a book about it. And it's a nonsense song, was a popular kind of song at that time. Don't try and find any meaning into it. Psychology is none. It's just a jolly, silly song. And surprisingly, it stuck with me. I don't know why it stuck with me. It stuck with me for 80 years or so. And I remember I learnt the words very soon. By the time I was 7, I could sing it. And I've gone on singing it ever since, but not very often. I revived it for this purpose because I wanted something which would catch something of my childhood. It was very limited.
The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea-green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a 5-pound note. And the owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a small guitar. Oh, lovely pussy, oh pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are. You are, you are. What a beautiful pussy you are. Pussy said to the owl, you elegant fowl, how remarkably sweetly you sing. Oh, when shall we be married? Too long we have tarried, but what shall we do for a ring? So they sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows. And there in a wood a piggy-wig stood with a ring at the end of his nose, his nose, his nose, with a ring at the end of his nose. Dear pig, are you willing to sell for 1 shilling? Said the piggy, I will. So they took it away and were married next day by the turkey that lives on the hill. And they dined on mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon. And hand in hand on the edge of the sand, they danced to the light of the moon, the moon, the moon. They danced to the light of the moon.
It was when I came to Oxford that things started to change for me. It was like a new world. You see, I'd never been to a party. You can't believe it. I never held a glass in my hand and drank. I only went to pubs. I never went to a party of 30 people and some pretty women or, oh my dear, I quite forgot about history, which I was supposed to be studying, and went into girls instead. And this was, I had a very good time, and I tried to become an actor. I acted in various things, and I was very cheerful about that. And one of the songs I picked up was this song, which was originally an Irish folk song, which W.B. Yeats, the poet of Ireland, he heard it and it clicked with him, and he wrote it as a poem. It's a kind of nostalgic song, and I'm slightly nostalgic about Oxford, that is true.
Down by the Sally Gardens, my love and I did meet. She walked the Sally Gardens with little snow-white feet. She bid me take love easy, like the leaves upon the tree. But I was young and foolish, and with her did not agree. In a field by the river, my love and I did stand, and on my leaning shoulder she laid her snow-white hand. She bid me take life easy, like the grass upon the weirs. But I was young and foolish, and now I'm full of tears.
After Oxford, I went to London as a journalist. I had no money at all. I remember that I owed £100, which doesn't sound much then, it was more then, and that's all I had. My parents didn't have any money, they couldn't do anything for me. My father worked in a factory, and they lived an ordinary, nice life, but they didn't have any money to give me. So I set up in a flat with 3 other people who didn't have any money. And we had a fairly riotous time, a little bohemian time, and I went more left-wing. I got more interested in politics. I stood as a candidate for the London County Council, but with no chance of winning, because I was in a place where there were only Conservatives. But anyway, so I stood for the Labour Party, and I got more and more interested in politics and left-wing politics. And I heard all kinds of songs at that time, of course, because people I was mixing with were artistic, and they sang. And one of the songs caught my attention because it's a workers' song, but it's a very good song. It's a song which has some power in it, and it's about Joe Hill. Joe Hill was a Swedish immigrant who was a leader of the workers' movement when the unions were not allowed in America. They were very unpopular, and he was killed by business landed interests somewhere in America, and he caught the attention of the people in the unions, the people in the movement. And it's a song about how he became a sort of, when he was dead, he became a posthumous hero. And he kept that role for a very long time.
I dreamt I saw Joe Hill last night, as live as you and me. Said I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he. And standing there as large as life and smiling with his eyes, said Joe, what they could never kill went on to organize, went on to organize. From Arizona unto Maine, in every mine and mill, where workers fight and organize, it's there you'll find Joe Hill. It's there you'll find Joe Hill. I dreamt I saw Joe Hill last night, as live as you and me. Said I, but Joe, you're 10 years dead. I never died, said he. I never died, said he.
I didn't like being a journalist very much. I wasn't particularly good at it, you know. It wasn't quite my thing. I didn't like hearing about things and writing about things and not being able to do anything. I finished up as assistant editor of a rather boring paper run by the National Union of Teachers, and this didn't please me at all. And one day I was travelling on the tube and I met a woman who I didn't really know. She said, "I'm going to be interviewed by the British Council." So I said, "What is it?" And she told me, and it's the part of the British government which works on cultural and educational activities overseas in 120 countries and so on. It's half part of the government, like the BBC. So I went with her and I took the papers. It was the last day. I filled them in on the spot, and 6 weeks later I was in the British Council. I was interviewed. So I came full of ideas about where I wanted to go. The guy started to ask me, and he said, "Where do you want to go?" So I said, "Well, you know, I don't know quite." He said, "Well, you've got choice." So he went India, Israel, Iran, Italy, and some other country beginning with I. He was immensely lazy. He didn't ask whether I knew Hebrew or Chinese or whatever it was. He just said, "Okay, you said Israel, Israel." Why did I say Israel? Because I thought it was very left-wing. And I was packed off to Israel, just by chance. I remember I came by boat, the Theodor Herzl. Shocked I was. Nobody went in the bar. I went in the bar, they were all Israeli passengers. There were 2 people in the bar. An English boat, the bar is the center of everything. So I came with my first wife and we had a very good 4 years. We were here 4 years. And in that time I heard the song I'm going to sing. I was very busy. I went to Kibbutzim, I went here, I lectured on English literature. And people, I think, liked me because I just asked questions. I asked questions all the time. You know, what about this, what about that? And I had some very good friends who were probably, I knew more senior people at that time than I ever did afterwards. I knew Yigal Allon and I knew this and that. So this song is a song about a part of the Israel which I like very much. It's called the Emek, and it's where my second wife lived for much of her life. It's a patriotic song, but it's a patriotic song with a difference. It's a lullaby, really, and the words, in case you don't know Hebrew, the words are about the place, the Nahalal, and so on, the places, but it's also about the valley being an object of love. And for the first settlers in Israel, I think it was. And this song, I always find it quite moving.
על שדות עמק יזרעאל, טל מלמטה ולבנה מעל, מבית אלפא עד נהלל. מאמה לילה מליל, מאמה ביזרעאל, נאמר עמק ארץ תפארת, אנו לך משמרת. נאמר עמק ארץ תפארת, אנו לך משמרת. ים הדגן מתנועע, שיר הרדע מצלצל, זוהי עצי ושדותיה, זהו עמק יזרעאל. תבורך הצירי תתהלל, מבית אלפא עד נהלל. מאמה לילה מליל, מאמה ביזרעאל, נאמר עמק ארץ תפארת, ענו לך משמרת. נאמר עמק ארץ תפארת, ענו לך משמרת.
Among the things which the British Council was active in was bringing distinguished individuals from England who had something to contribute to Israel, who would raise, as it were, the profile or the connection with England. It wasn't so easy when I first came here because the memories of the Mandate and the war and the treatment of people trying to flee from the Holocaust were still quite strong. One of the visitors who came was a man called Alfred Deller. And Alfred Deller was a countertenor. In England, when this man started to revive the music which had been sung by countertenors, there was none. And almost single-handed, he made the whole business of being a countertenor fashionable. He came here with 4 people and he sang a Handel opera called Acis and Galatea. But he also got me interested in madrigals. I'd really not recognized madrigals much because he had a most wonderful voice. He was a splendid singer. He himself was a big, stout man who had had no connections. He was a poor boy. He'd been a choir boy in a cathedral in Canterbury, and it was all his own work, and he was very proud of it. He was kind of, in a way, a little bit childish, but I liked him, I respected him. And he was here for 10 days or 2 weeks, and I got to know him quite well because I drove him from place to place, and we chatted and so on. And this is one of the madrigals which I heard from him and which I afterwards learnt.
White as lilies was her face, when she smiled she beguiled, quitting faith with foul disgrace, virtue's service thus neglected, heart with sorrow hath infected. When I called my heart her own, she disdained, I complained, yet she left me overthrown, careless of my bitter grieving, ruthless bent on no relieving. All in vain is lady's love, quickly choosed, shortly losed, for their pride is to remove out alas their looks first won us, and their pride hath straight undone us. For my heart though set at naught, if you will it spoil and kill it, I will never change my thought, but grieve that beauty e'er was born. And so I live as one forlorn.
In 1968, I was sent back again to run the office, and I started then to get interested in my second wife, as it turned out. And she was a very beautiful, intelligent woman. That was the big emotional event in my life, you know. And after we had some problems getting together, we did get together. One of the first things we did was to go on holiday in France, where she had a friend. And we stayed with her in what is called the Dordogne. Dordogne is right in the middle of France. It has a tradition of being troubadours. That's where the troubadours sang to their ladies. This Pavan was originally written as a dance, but it is a love song.
Belle, quittions ma vie, captive dans tes yeux, qui m'a l'âme ravie, un sourire gracieux, bientôt me secourir, ou me faudra mourir, bientôt me secourir, ou me faudra mourir. Pourquoi fuis-tu, mignade, si je suis près de toi? Quand tes yeux je regarde, je me prends dedans moi, car tes perfections changent mes actions, car tes perfections changent mes actions. Approchez-moi, ma belle, approchez près de moi. Ne me sois plus rebelle, parce que mon cœur tient. Pour mon mal apaisé, donne-moi un baiser. Pour mon mal apaisé, donne-moi un baiser.
During that holiday, we went for walks, and this is a poem about one of the walks, which was not such a nice day. It was cloudy and stuff like that, but I wrote it long after the event. So, but when I wrote it, it wasn't taken absolutely literally of where I'd been, but it's still, I remember the feeling of just walking in the sort of more or less in the rain, of being totally happy.
Our walk in France was on a hill, a stroll between showers, bundled up against the cold, damp seeping through our shoes. Walnuts fell from the trees, we filled our pockets, apples scattered the ground, we found a place for some. I have been to distant Cathay, climbed Himalayan peaks, flown high above the pole, lay on a beach in Bali in the sun, seen pyramids and palaces, shrines where prophets taught, but would give them all to walk again on the damp hill in France.
When Sonia had finally joined me, we spent some time in England, but then we were sent to India. I had a great time in India. I mean, I had a very good job. I was responsible for what was then called an aid program. It was a program which was designed to help the Indians develop their society. We did projects. What did we do? We worked on sewage, installing sewage in Calcutta with the World Bank, a very unromantic subject. We worked on mechanizing coal mines so that the poor guys who worked there wouldn't have to work with picks and shovels. We worked on helping farmers develop their use of fertilizers. But I also got interested in India, you know. And Sonia took up meditation and yoga, and I traveled a lot. I went to places where my predecessors had not really been, because, you know, they lived in their office, they sent the Indian staff to do that kind of thing. And I went, you know, I went up into the hills. I went to a place in a province called Orissa, where I went with Sonia. She was the first European woman these guys had ever seen. And they came and they, you know, sort of felt to see if she was real and things like that. Towards the end of that time, the World Bank became very unpopular because they were digging up the streets to make these sewers. They had to close the main streets, and everybody said, "Oh, what are they doing?" You know, no. So I said to the bank, "We've got to have an exhibition. We've got to tell people what we're doing." And it grew from a small idea. The National Museum cleared 2 galleries, and I wrote the script because the Indian I was supposed to write it with died. And I wrote the script about Calcutta and the history of Calcutta. And then at the end, we said what the World Bank was doing. And it was a big success. Mrs. Gandhi came and opened it, the Prime Minister of Bengal and so on. So I had a great time with that. Well, I didn't bring any songs back from India because singing Indian music is totally beyond me. But once when I was in the Himalayas on a sort of trek, a guy had his guitar with him and he sang a song which is called Old Man River. Old Man River was in a musical, 1928, Cole Porter, but it's actually in a way a philosophical song. And India changed my views about life, you see. I got interested in meditation, I found a teacher. I stuck with that teacher who lived in the Himalayas, a place called Kulu, for nearly 20 years. I'm still very rational. I'm not a New Age person. My wife was a New Age person. She believed in all kinds of things which I only half believe in. But at the same time, it did change my view about life.
Old Man River, that old man river, he must know something, but don't say nothing. Old man river, he just goes rolling along. He don't plant taters, he don't plant cotton, and those that plant them are soon forgotten. But old man river, he just goes rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Tote that bale, pull that barge, get a little drunk and you land in jail. I am weary and sick o' trying, I'm tired o' living and feared o' dying. Old Man River, he just keeps rolling along.
This poem was written 5 years ago after Sonia died, and when I was in quite a poor state, I must say. I read it, although it's sad, because in essence it is not sad, because it is about how you can care for people when they're gone and still lead a normal life. It's a sad poem, but it has a positive end in a way, because what it shows is that you can keep the memory and it could be dear to you, and that is, I think, a good thing.
If you should rise, disfigured from the grave, and seek to kiss me with your earthbound lips, I would not shrink, but take you in my arms, to lie with you in your long silent rest. If you should come in dreams from bright sky to stroke me with your shining hands, I would rejoice and in rejoicing sleep, and in that sleeping sleep my life away. If you come neither from earth nor sky, then shall I look for you within my heart. There will I find and hold you close, defying earth and sky.
I've been fortunate to find a partner. Not that Sonia is forgotten. I found a partner, Hamletaba Youssef, who is a woman of considerable charm and ability. She's a very well-known poet, she's a scholar, and she's also a lover of life. So we have established a very positive relationship. We've come to love one another. Perhaps not as we might have done had we been 22, but still to find great pleasure in one another's company. Together with that, I've been quite fortunate in that I've been able to continue to work. I have been asked to organize work on climate change by the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies, which is down in the desert. There we have a very interesting project which is designed to help Israelis, Jordanians, Palestinians to work together, and the part that I look after with a Palestinian lady is intended to set up a regional center for adaptation to climate change. This is a quite ambitious undertaking, but some of the background that I have working abroad in various kinds of diplomatic roles helps me a little. I've also just produced a volume of poetry, which I think is quite poor, but Hamotel tells me I have to publish it, so that's it. So that's being published in America, and I hope it'll be interesting. This last song is an English folk song. When I heard it, I didn't give it the significance I did later on, but then, when Sonia died, it came into my mind. Basically, I think people have to go on. I think there's no choice. My life really is extremely rich. It's quite busy and I'm lucky. I sometimes wonder that I deserve it.
The water is wide, I cannot come over, and neither have I wings to fly. Give me a boat to carry me over, and we will row, my love and I. The water is wide, I cannot come over, and neither have I wings to fly. Give me a boat to carry me over, and we will row, my love and I.
Here I am. I don't know how long I live. I don't worry about it very much. Perhaps I should. I feel more or less completely at ease with life. Of course, when I have a small road accident, I get angry as anything, as I did yesterday. But in general, I'm glad that you listened, and thank you very much. And on we go.
The water is wide, I cannot come over, and neither have I wings to fly. Give me a boat to carry me over,